Hello, my spooky friends. I'm John, your host, and welcome to another episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest and beyond. And I have Spock with me tonight. He has risen from the grave. Leonard Nimoy, how did you get on? I have two great spooky guests. I'm so blessed to have them on my show. Leslie and Stephen Shaw, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great to hear.
I'm excited because not only do Leslie and Stephen write a great book, and let's see if I get this right, their book title, Who They Are and What They're Up To. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yay!
Thank you.
I got it right.
Yay. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about the book tonight, my spooky friends, but also we're going to talk about a little bit about Leslie and Stephen because they're kind of interesting people. And I think that's something, once this episode comes out, maybe you want to ask them some questions, not only about UFOs, but maybe some other things. And I'm sure you would both love to hear from people and see how you can help them, not only as authors, but maybe things like you were a journalist, Leslie, for a number of years. Could you kind of talk about that? What did you cover? I'm just kind of curious on that.
I worked for a small town newspaper. So, a lot of times it was, I had the art beat because I had an art degree. So I covered all the art openings around town, which was fun. And it's actually a very large art community in the Morongo Basin.
She also worked in the television industry before that, too, for quite a while.
Yeah, in the graphic design. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was going to bring that up. Experimental animation. Can you explain that to my spooky friends?
Most people have heard of the California Institute of the Arts. That's a college up in Valencia that has they teach the Disney program of animation in one of their animation schools. And then the other one, it's everything else, the not Disney first way of animating. So it's sort of a lump. They just lump it into experimental animation.
An eclectic department, yeah.
Yeah. So not the standard Disney method. So
awesome.
That's all that was. And then I worked in television for a long time, and then moved to the high desert and worked in the Morongo Basin, which is in the Joshua Tree, is in that area. And it happens to be a hotbed area for UFOs. And sure enough, that's where I got to see my first. But Stephen was a practitioner of Chinese medicine, an acupuncturist. He's recently retired. Go ahead and tell him more, sweetie.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, Stephen.
Professional stained glass artist for 7 years.
Oh yeah, I'm an artist too.
So
nice.
I'd make sure that got in there too. But
Thanks.
yeah, I started out as a musician. Been a lifelong musician. I'm a orchestral grade accordionist and pianist, and on several other instruments. Been recorded a few times. I was a cabinet maker as a young man. Worked with my father, who was a master cabinet maker.
Oh, nice.
I did 6 years in the military, in the Seabees, which is a branch of the Navy from 80 to 86.
Construction battalion.
Battalion. Stationed on Midway for a while. That was a really cool place to be stationed. Has a lot of history there.
Yeah.
And I became a Tai Chi teacher at about the age of 23, having studied for a number of years, and also studied various other martial arts like Monkey Kung Fu, and I taught Tai Chi for 23 years.
And he utilized Qigong in his practice.
Qigong was just a big part of Tai Chi, same thing with Monkey Kung Fu. And then I was a state licensed acupuncturist here in California for 20 years.
Nice.
So I've worn a lot of hats, done some traveling, and I like languages, and have a family history that has to do with our 4 generations of interaction with this entity that's been known by the name of Oglegli, which is the spooky part of things.
The family spirit guide.
So let's talk about that. I was just about to bring that up. So can you explain what you mean by that? Because that's very, very interesting.
Yeah, Oak Likely, interestingly enough, I found out from my uncle and aunt, who were also world travelers many times over, that they were in a bar in Tunisia for whatever reason, and they found out that the name Oak Likely means my friend,
Oh,
which I thought was kind of very interesting. And this character, Old Glegley, always appears the same way over four
Well,
generations,
actually,
and
the shape,
similar,
the shape
a
is the
similar
same.
way.
Yeah.
Okay, to be more
okay.
exact,
Yeah.
yes.
Sorry.
Always tall and skinny, about 6.5 feet tall.
Ooh,
Sometimes black. Sometimes, for me, it was a blue-white entity.
Almost like an electric
And
avatar of
for
him.
my younger brother in 1982, this old Gleggy character appeared as a 6.5 foot tall gray alien in his
ooh,
bedroom. And
okay.
my brother was one of these no nonsense guys. He taught calculus at a college level for fun, and he
Okay.
was an engineer and a draftsman. So it's kind of like we had this family entity that we talked about between
Okay.
ourselves, but we really didn't share with, for instance, friends at school. I
Yeah.
wouldn't be telling, friends at school that we had this family spirit guide. Either they would think that I'm nuts,
Or just
or
plain
I'm
weird.
lying, or I'm
Yeah.
living in a
Yeah.
haunted house.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we kept this stuff pretty much within the family.
And actually, being British, and they were rather reticent to even talk to us. We finally had to have a family sit down to pull some of this information, that we got from the various different experiences that the family were having. And I'm really glad we did, because a lot of them just didn't talk about it for generations and decades.
Wow.
Right. Well, my first visitations happened for me when I was 3 years of age. I would be occasionally visited by this invisible two-legged being that would playfully jump on my chest and my stomach in the middle of the night. Kind of like you
Mm.
think like a dog or a cat would jump on you, but
Right.
with two legs, but nothing was there.
And invisible.
And because I knew about O'Glegley, I thought, oh, this is just part of the Shaw family inheritance. We have this spirit guide
Yeah.
that was I always
Right.
told it was a spirit guide.
Mm.
Incidentally, all the women in the Shaw and the Rowe and the Newman family, going back from Germany to England to California, they've all had the ability to automatic write and do other various things. My
Oh, wow.
mom proved that to me on several occasions, things that she
Right.
should not have known.
This old
Um,
Glegley character would somehow make her feel like she needed to sit down and write. I had this urge to sit down and write.
Communicate.
Mm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and then this old Glegley character would communicate with the family this way.
Like when our mother died in England and we
Oh,
were in California, she picked me up from school when I was 9 years old, and she was just bawling. She was crying, and
Mm.
I said, "Mommy, what's wrong?"
Right.
And she said, "My mom just died." Well, did you get a call? She says, "No, I got this feeling I had to write, and I was communicated by old Glegley, and old Glegley told me that your mom had just taken a fall and just died."
Mm.
So, and then she told my dad when he came home from cabinet making, and my dad knew about old Glegley, so he believed her. But when he fully believed her, when we got the call like a day later from England,
yeah,
confirming that she had died.
official
Yeah,
word
and then
arrived.
Yeah.
about 10 years later, 6 or 10 years later, my grandfather died, and the same thing happened.
Mm.
And then when my uncle Clifford died, the same thing happened again. So always she would get contacted. This feeling would come over her. For me, when I get a feeling coming over for me, I gotta sit down and play on the piano. I gotta just create a piece of music. And I don't know whether Debussy is coming through me or what, but it just that for me, my channeling is through music.
The
Hers
whole
was through writing.
the whole family are very psychic, though.
So
Stephen reads my mind on a regular basis, and
Oh.
with weird stuff too that even words
yeah,
that don't
really, even words
words
that
that
don't
don't
exist.
exist.
He'll pull them out of my head
Yeah,
somehow.
not just like you get to know each other familiar
Yeah,
and just like, but yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it happens with married couples anyway, but it just
Right.
ridiculous amount with him, and also, uh,
I've had precog things happen to me too. In fact, just
yeah,
recently.
and his sister is a psychic ghost hunter in northern England. It runs in the family. The whole
Yeah,
family is
she
Wow.
she
psychic.
got married and moved to England. She and her husband do
Yeah.
part-time ghost hunting.
And then we
Right.
recently
You had
heard
a
from
question.
Luis Elizondo, this famous guy who released the videos. to the New York Times in 2017 with the Go Fast gimbal and
Tic Tac.
Tic Tac videos, and he recently spoke about this, and he said there's been a confirmation of something we've known for years, that there is a connection between psychic ability and the UFO phenomenon.
Right.
A lot of people I've met who are abductees, and just in hearing it in reporting, it seems to be that psychic people are targeted as one of the criteria that they pick for choosing people.
It also has to do with remote viewing, which apparently Elizondo did. He was taught how to remote view. It's in his book Imminent.
Mm-hmm.
And also, too, there's an area of the brain called the parahippocampal gyrus, which tends to be hyperdeveloped or enlarged in people that have paranormal or psychic experiences.
Well, who've been abducted specifically.
And have been abducted specifically. So we're starting to find more of the scientific connections between the psychic ability and the communication that seems to be happening between what we call our cousins and certain human beings. Okay.
Yeah, we don't call them aliens mostly.
We call them cousins.
We think they're a lot closer relation than that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So Stephen, let me back up here about the spirits. So I had a guest on about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he loves the outdoors. He goes hiking all the time. He's in touch with nature. He's always been that way. And
that was me.
He has a spirit guide. He's from North Carolina, and the North Carolina is, I don't know if you've ever been there, but if you haven't, I would suggest highly going. It's absolutely gorgeous. A lot of different little mountains and obviously very interesting forests, woods full of magic, and a lot of different spirits. So he has a spirit guide of a Native American who will do two different things. One, he talked about, will warn him, like, hey, kind of in general, like, hey, what you're doing to this earth is terrible, and you need to do something. Also, it will talk to him in a way to be like, hey, I just want to let you know, and again, I'm just paraphrasing here. There's something going on with your mom. There's something wrong. And this happened a number of years ago, just like you said. There's something, you might want to call her and
check
see if
on
she's
mom,
all right. Check on mom, see if she's all right. Yeah. And what always interests me is, why do you think these spirits are giving you kind of, not advice and warnings, and where do you think they come from? I mean, I'm really just fascinated by the whole thing of why a spirit would choose you or someone else, or maybe they can have everyone and we're just not open to it, right? Maybe we're just not open to seeing that. What do you guys think about that?
I've got several comments upon that. One thing that I learned through teaching Tai Chi and Qigong and doing other spiritual practices and just doing the work, and also coming from a family that has, disability, is that they are contacting us with one very common message. One common message is that take better care of the planet, for one thing. And they do that a lot with younger people, especially like the children in Zimbabwe. Yeah. And we see our cousins as being handlers. We call them handlers. They are either assigned or they are part of this bloodline or our bloodline that is, it's a necessity thing too. Our cousins need us. We are kind of in a symbiotic relationship where if we do well, it helps them because they actually need us for like things such as DNA purpose, for genetics, genetic
material.
Things we're just toying around with now, like with CRISPR technology. We're toying around with it. For them, it's just like playing with Legos. Playing with Lego sets. There's a symbiotic relationship. That's the way we see it.
Yes.
In a nutshell. And they care about us,
That's really interesting.
They mostly care about themselves, but a lot of our interests align. for instance, we don't think they're coming here from distant star systems. We think they're
Mm,
coming here from deep underground bases that they've occupied for thousands of years. So if we destroy the planet, we
mm,
kill them too.
right.
So that explains
They're all of a sudden
their
showing up as Foo Fighters,
yeah,
and
following our military everywhere they go,
Yeah.
lodging themselves right outside our nuclear bases, messing with our nuclear tests.
Hmm.
When they do get their message across to people, it's please denuclearize, please take better care of the
Hmm.
planet, please don't
Hmm.
blow up the planet. These are their messages again and again and again. That points to our theory being correct, because if they came here from distant star systems, why would they care that much? It's certainly not to devote the amount of resources that they're
Hmm.
doing,
Hmm.
following our military absolutely every
Hmm.
single time
and
we go
following
out.
generations of families too.
Yeah, and handling
Yeah.
families, like in the case of old Glegley, who we now believe is a gray alien handler.
Tall gray alien
And
handler.
they've been underground for thousands of years. In fact, we think a lot of people went underground 13,000 years ago. It was actually 12,850 years ago that the Younger Dryas comet hit North America.
Hmm.
And as it came through the atmosphere, it broke into pieces, because comets are big snowballs with rocks in them, right?
Dirty snowballs with rocks, yeah.
And it was traveling at 40,000 miles an hour and about 62 miles wide, so big.
Hmm.
But when it broke up in the atmosphere, it caused these air bursts in front of it that set all the forests in North America
And the
and
northern hemisphere.
northern Europe
Europe.
and Russia on fire. We're all at the same time, because that's discovered 13,000-year-old soil has this Uccello horizon, a layer of charcoal,
Hmm.
right? Then
Hmm.
right above that is 1,100 years of the Younger Dryas cooling period, where where there was drastic climate upheaval. So about 1,000 years, you wouldn't have been able to grow crops on the
It would
planet.
have been very challenging, let's put it that way.
Yeah, so that's where anyone left on the surface that survived, lucky to
Yeah.
survive. They became hunter gatherers again and essentially shoved back into the Stone Age. But we think the people that escaped below, kind of like in that Deep Impact movie where they made a deep underground arcs for everybody to
Right.
survive in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We think that's precisely what they did. They saw this almost extinction level event coming, and so we think that some of them stayed underground and came back up eventually, and those are the more Nordic-like aliens. And some of them stayed underground all 13,000 years and look more like the Greys. The Greys, to me, what I see is a human being that's been underground for thousands of years. They're
Hmm.
pale, their eyes are bigger. They still, just like us though, they walk perfectly upright. So, we think they are actually mutated humans. And
Yeah.
there's been some proof of that too.
Some have been seen with nipples.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they're all almost. I mean, all of the aliens described by people are bipedal hominids.
Hmm.
And as we said before, we think they utilize genetic modification just like we would use any tool. So if they need beings that can work underwater, they'll create a race of reptiloids, maybe, or if
Yeah.
they need people to work underground, they'll keep the grays, maybe the way they are, or created them to be more like that.
Right,
So
I think
Yeah.
they partially manipulated myself.
I do too, because they're
Yeah.
very, grays act like automatons. They don't really act like normal
Right.
living
Right.
beings.
Right.
They have no emotions, and they're very businesslike. They never stand around wondering what to do next. They're
Right.
very
Right.
goal driven.
And they're telepathic. We know that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we think
So,
that's more proof, because if they're telepathic with us, they must have similar brains, right?
right. So hold that thought. I'm going to back up here a little bit, because what I want to know is, first of all, about your book. What inspired you to write who they are and what they're up to? I mean, what was the inspiration behind it?
Well, for me, there was an event that happened when I was about 30, 31 years of age. I was married to my first wife, and it was kind of a culmination of things that have happened throughout my life that I really started doing my own research into this whole old Glegley character and what was really going on. I was very confused. I had this incident about 5:30 in the morning. I was living in a condo on the second story. My wife, she was a school teacher and she was getting ready to go to school, and she would like take hours getting ready to go to school. That was just her thing. She's obsessive compulsive. So, anyways, I was just laying in bed and just trying to go back to sleep. And then I hear this distinctive sound of a Harley Davidson motorcycle being rum, rum,
Yeah.
and then just getting up to full speed, right? And this is like January of 1992, 1992, and it's dark, all right, and this is in a courtyard where the pool is right by the courtyard. So I got up out of bed. I said, who the f is revving the Harley Davidson? And there was nobody there. And so I thought, well, that was really strange. So then I went back to bed, laying on my back and trying to go back to sleep again. And then the same thing happened, the very same sound. And I thought, and I looked again, and then there was nothing there. And then same thing happened the third time. This time, all these entities entered the room. They were everything from clownish looking to alien looking to maybe a couple of animals, and they were literally just swarming me. And I was awake, and I was just thinking, God, what is happening? And that happened. I guess it went on for 30 seconds to a minute, whatever. And then then they just disappeared. And I thought, am I losing my mind? And I told, Gail about it, and she said, don't bother me with your silly stuff. I'm going to work, right?
Sure.
So I had to drive an hour and 10 minutes. I was working as an acupuncturist and a physical therapist. So I had an hour and 10-minute drive.
After this bizarre experience,
experience, and it left me really, really shaken. So then the next day I went to go see a psychic on my day off, and she told me some things, said, I think there may be an alien connection. And that's when I started really looking into things like Graham Hancock's work and Bramley's work. And then I actually got the first copy of Avril Byrd's diary. And I thought, this is just not adding up. The stuff that's been happening to my family, that was still happening to my family.
Right.
And I thought, I got to start to get to the bottom of this.
And when he was 18, these incidents seemed to come in clusters.
Yeah.
And when he was 18, they had an incident of 5 in a row that really got him wondering what the heck is going on.
All members of the family, all 5 members of the family experienced this. It's in the book. It's in the beginning of the book.
Okay.
The first night, my dad, my sister, and I were living in Woodland Hills in the house, the Fallbrook house we called it, and we had our woodworking shop in the garage, and we did our work out of the garage and stored cabinets in the house. And I was 18 at the time, and that first morning, my dad came to breakfast, and he said, Stephen, my closet doors opened and closed on me last night. And I just kind of looked at him, and we kind of brushed it off, said, must have been a dream or something like that, right?
Yeah, okay.
So the second night, at that point, I had just been studying for Tai Chi for about a year, and I was reading Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Metaphysical Meditations. Really cool little book about, really life lessons. And I said, maybe my dad might like reading this. So about 9 o'clock at night, I went into the living room and said, Dad, you should read some of this. And so I gave it to him. And this guy, by the way, my dad was a bobby for 4 years in England. He was, a cop in England.
Yeah.
And before that, he was in the RAF, the Royal Air Force. So basically grew up in wartime England, was a no-nonsense guy. So about half an hour later, he came into my bedroom with this perplexed look on his face, and he just said, Stephen, I'm hearing a silver bell. Now, myself being a musician, I know what a silver bell sounds like. So I went into the living room, and sure enough, there's this silver bell being rung, going ding, ding, ding. Thing was, it was coming from inside the 2x4 wall by the fireplace. So my dad and I, we looked up the flue and didn't know what to think. So we got my sister. Sister was 13 at the time. and she was wanting to have nothing to do with this stuff. At the time, she just like thought
Sure.
this was all weird, right?
Yeah.
And
It's
so
not happening.
we
It's
asked
not
her to come into the
happening.
living room, and the first thing she said was, "Where's that bell coming from?" So we all heard the silver bell at the same time, and we banged on the wall, and it went on for a good 10 minutes, and then it stopped, and then we all went to bed. Next morning, it was our habit to call my brother and my mom, who were living at the house that we were building ourselves up in Sonora, California, which is 350 miles away in the lower Sierras. And my mom said to my dad, "You know, the weirdest thing happened last night, Jeffrey. I heard this bell ringing, and I thought it was the phone. And I picked up the phone, and there was this voice of a man, like a baritone voice, saying, 'I am the invisible Beachy,' or something like that.
Hmm.
And so we went on about that. Then I got my brother on the phone, and I said, 'Philip, did the phone ring?' He says, 'No, the phone didn't ring, but Mom did pick up the phone, and she was conversing with somebody.' This was happening at exactly the same time we were getting the silver bell in our house, 350 miles south, right?
Hmm.
So the following night, I decided I went to bed in my bedroom as normal, and I was sleeping on the lower bunk bed, and I was awakened by this whizzing sound in the ear, this whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I thought, well, maybe somebody had a fan on or whatever, and I got up, looked down the hall, and the light was on in the kitchen, and there's nothing there, so I went back to bed and laid on my left side, and then all of a sudden my bed was being pushed, two distinct pushes from the base of the bed, like somebody's like, wake up, you know. And I thought, well, I
Hmm.
thought at first, no, maybe it's an earthquake, living in Southern California. So then, okay, try to ignore it, and then it gets pushed twice again, a little more vigorously, and then
Hmm.
it got pushed even more vigorously. At this point, I'm thinking, is somebody playing a joke on me? Or what is going on?
Right.
And I'm starting to
Right.
get nervous and kind of irritated. And then
Hmm.
I get three distinct taps, like an index finger tapping on my mid right deltoid. Tap, tap, tap. And at this point, I'm nervous. And I just wheeled around and I said, "What?" And
Hmm.
there was like
Yeah.
this shimmery thing in front of me.
Like distortion in the air,
And
right?
I looked at, and then I black out. So I told my dad at breakfast time, and we didn't know what to think at the time. So the
Mhm.
next night, we went to work, of course, and the next night I decided I'm not sleeping in my bedroom. So I decided to wear my work clothes from that day and sleep on the couch in the living room. And so that's what I did. I woke up again. This is in January, okay, January of 1978.
Hmm.
No, 79, 1979, because I was 18. January 1979, and I looked at my piano, which is to my right, and think about what music I was going to play that day, and I listened to the fountain in the other room. So I was awake, and it's too early to get up, 5:30. So, but the thing is that this entity, again, tall and skinny, about 6.5 feet tall, from the front door, just kind of came from the front door, blue white, intense blue white, and it brought with it the whole house was filled with blue white light. And it
Wow.
kind of walked towards me. It was like waiting for me to become conscious. So it walked towards me in about a second and a half to 2 seconds, stopped by my right side. And when it stopped by my right side, the whole right side of my body just went paralyzed. Not
Hmm.
in a scary way, but just
Okay.
I couldn't move it. My right eye was open. I couldn't close it if I wanted to. And it
Hmm.
bent down to my ear and it said, "Hi, Steve," in a voice that I
Jeez.
couldn't tell whether it was male or female. And
Oh.
here, with my 18-year-old mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to see old Glegley. I'm going to see the family spirit guide
Okay.
that I've
Yeah,
heard
that
about.
makes sense.
And I said, this is cool. But then the other side of my brain was thinking, dude, you are paralyzed. You can't move if you want to,
Hmm.
And so I was like 50-50 between being scared and being, really
Yeah.
curious, right?
Right.
And I think that it lasted about 5 seconds, maybe 10 seconds. And then the entity, I, I try to look at his face, right? The
But
entity
he couldn't
went
move.
back up vertical and left. Now,
Hmm.
And then I black out, and I can guarantee you there was no UFO parked in my front driveway because we had two big trucks in the driveway, so there was no
Yeah.
UFO that landed. But
Okay.
this thing and I told my dad about it, and he thought, I don't know what's going on, right? So, anyways, 11:30 that day, we're both getting hungry for lunch. So I said, Dad, I'll just go down to the Jack in the Box. So I just pulled out the coins that were in my right side pocket, put them on the table, and all the American coins, all standard American coins, they're all magnetized. I could pick up the coins by the edge, by the face. It didn't matter. There were a few nails in there too, some six-penny nails, same thing. My dad could do the same thing too. And again, we had no cell phones or smartphones, so and it didn't occur to us like to go get a picture. So I don't have a picture.
Yeah, they had to just get back to work too.
But we told my sister and my dad, if we were still alive, he could verify that. So, anyways, it all culminated with the final night. I decided to go back to sleep in my bedroom. The final night, my dad is the one who gets awakened in the middle of the night, and he sees this wall of blue-white, shiny light coming from my bedroom, and basically engulfing the whole door.
And flooding out into the.
So, being an ex-cop and whatever, and being my dad, he says, "I'm going to get up and see what's going on."
What's all this then?
So he's getting out of bed, and he has a voice inside his head saying, "Jeffrey, just relax. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here." And that's exactly what he did. He went back to sleep, and it was like
Yeah.
I
think they have a consciousness dampening ability, because a lot of people in the family, they always have these blackout things. And then in our research, we discovered that this is the signature for the alien abduction phenomenon. People see something bizarre and maybe even terrifying, where their heart is pounding and they're in terror, and still
their adrenals are up. Yeah.
They black out, just like they went back to sleep, and then they awaken hours later in bed, all tucked in.
Then my brother had his three things happen at the house that we're building in Sonora when he was 16 in 1982, and it culminated with him seeing a tall, skinny, 6.5 feet tall, just standing in his doorway, and they just looked at each other for a couple of seconds. He saw it for sure, and then he blacked out.
And that's when we started realizing, okay, this is who we're dealing with, because it was hard. A lot of abduction memories for these victims, they'll remember bits and dribs and drabs of their abduction experience, but frequently they can't see the face of their abductor. They can't remember the face of their abductor without hypno-regression, right? And I think this is because they put auto-suggestions in people to forget stuff, including the face of their abductors. So frequently the boys, he and his brother would see them as other things. Like one time they saw them as gnomes.
That's when we were very young, yes.
And they have this shimmery quality to the memories that we think have been tampered with. A lot of the family members would describe a memory as a shimmery thing,
Yeah.
And our research shows that, at the time when we started our research, the theory was that aliens are just curious about us. They're just taking samples, no big deal. They're taking people and putting them back, no big deal, just for scientific curiosity. But that turns out not to be what was really happening. What happens more is they'll target a family. They'll find a genetic line or a DNA line that meets their criteria that they want, and they'll prey on that family again and again and again for generations. And that was, to me, it seems more like they're harvesting a product that they desperately need, rather than, we're just curious. Because you don't need the same sample again and again and again and again through a person's life. But if you're stealing sperm and eggs out of human beings, then you have to wait a few months, I guess, for them to generate more, so you can steal more.
Yeah. So why do you think, or why do you believe that alien abductions run in families?
Like I say, they're after a certain genetic line that they like. They find a certain family line that they like. For instance, we know that they target specifically mostly Caucasian people. About 90%, a little more than 90% of abductees are Caucasian.
Including the Basque people, too.
Right. And Basques are taken more often than any other one racial group, white division of racial groups. And it's because Well, we don't know for sure. They have the highest instances of Rh negative, and so do abductees. So we don't know if they're after Rh negative and therefore taking more Basques, or if they're after Basques and therefore taking more Rh negatives.
Yeah,
They
right.
also target people with green eyes more often than frequently, and psychic
Okay.
people. That seems to be one of their criteria of judgment, and I'm pretty sure that's why they targeted the Shaw family, because of this
And like,
long generation of psychic
yeah, and
abilities.
like I try to
Yeah.
explain people, having been, in the field of medicine, that and you look at the oldest languages, they're always pictographic type languages or
Right.
representational. Like, for instance, you could say in any language, any of the 8,000 languages on the planet, you could say tree. Okay. Now, a tree can be said, the word tree can be said 8,000 different ways, right? But the first thing you don't think about is how to spell the word tree. First thing you do, the first thing you get a picture in your mind of
Hmm.
one of the trees that you like or one of your favorite trees.
Right.
Basically, like our language is about 6 or 7 or 8 steps away from the way the brain normally thinks. We think in pictures and concepts. It's one of the ways that, Chinese language is different than ours because it's a conceptual language. It's not a linear language. You look at how they portray a man like it's a stick with a walking figure. Now, if you want to add different details to it, you add different lines to it. So the way the human brain, that's why our cousins, they're not learning 8,000 different languages. They are communicating us with a more primal, more basic way of communicating. They're communicating via telepathy.
We think that telepathy is actually a human birthright,
Yes, it
but that
is.
we've sort of let it atrophy in ourselves.
Mm.
And that, when our cousins went underground, they didn't lose their culture, their technology, their religion, their knowledge, their history. That was all intact. So they're 13,000 years ahead of us, technologically speaking, but also spiritually. So they could be all telepathic just because it's something they practice regularly. It's a muscle they exercise regularly
Sure.
that human beings have let, like I say, atrophy.
Yeah, even Elizondo in his book, they're touching more upon that, and Dolan, they're touching upon those facts about certain parts of the brain, like you call it the parahippocampal gyrus, and there are different areas that basically also in Jason Martell's work that I listened to one of his seminars at uh,
Alien come.
Alien Con, that some of the recent research shows that the neocortex, which is the most recent part of the brain, it shows direct evidence of having been tampered with
Right,
about 300,000 years ago, where the area near Bronca's brain, and it has to do with human speech patterns,
right.
has been like a cut and paste job. So that was interesting in and of itself. When we think about it,
Yes.
if you need a workforce and you have to educate a workforce to build, let's say, a pyramid or whatever it is, you can't do it all by telepathy. You have to have like literally diagrams and blueprints.
Right.
You
Right,
have to have a way of communicating, and that has to be done by language or some form of cuneiform or some of language. This is our
right,
plan, and they have to be educated to a certain degree to know how to use tools.
right.
So the thing is, it's just it just when you really look at it from a scientific standpoint, it's like a no-brainer.
See,
No, no pun intended.
that's what people ask us after we convince people that with our theories and our evidence that we really are dealing with humans as far as the ones flying the UFOs in our skies right now. They're like a breakaway mutated branch of humanity that's been separated from us for thousands of years, but still basically
Because
humans.
it's just a lot safer. We found in our book too. We did a whole chapter just on just how frequently these extinction level events and these close extinction level events,
Yeah,
they
meteorites
happen a
and
lot more frequently than people think.
yeah.
It's just not it's actually safer to live subsurface than it is to live on the
Or at
surface.
least have a breakaway population down
Right.
there. And
Sure.
like I said, there was 1,000 years of climate upheaval right after, so they would have stayed underground for generations, making a whole race of agoraphobes. Probably they probably don't like coming to the surface
Yeah.
anymore. Probably it's big and scary up there, right?
Yeah.
And we do have
Absolutely.
some evidence of this. there's this book called The Hair of the Alien. This about 10% of abductees are actually sexually assaulted, and women, a lot of the women that are become pregnant, and then the fetuses are stolen. I know it couldn't sound stranger, but it's been documented again and again and again. Anyway, this gentleman was being sexually assaulted one night by two alien women, one of whom he got a good look at. She had long white hair, and her eyes were too large, like she was sort of a hybrid being. And
lucky guy.
She had white, and so he was paralyzed, and they had sex with him, and then the next morning he found one of her hairs in his bed, this long white hair, right? So he got it genetically analyzed, and it's a clear, it was completely clear, like fishing line, and there is no known hair type, human hair type, that is like that. Even albino hair is not clear. But it also tested as human, but bizarre human. It was Gaelic and Basque, and a subset of Chinese, which only makes up 1% of the population.
Yeah, very bizarre.
Very bizarre, but human. Yeah. So we are talking about, not only is it a human, but it's a mutated human, and we have the genetic roadmap to prove it.
Also, too, when we talked about the Uccello event, the Uccello horizon, that around about that same time too, there's what we call a genetic bottleneck, where we can actually prove, it's been proven that the surface human population was reduced to probably less than 10,000 individuals. We know that the Aborigines survived because they've been around for a long time, over 50,000 years. So we know in Australia that they survived, but the vast majority of the northern hemisphere humans had a very hard time of it. To put it,
And like I say, we were shoved back into the Stone Age, where our cousins were comfortable underground with their technology and their heaters and their electricity growing their crops.
It's weird now that there's a series out now called Fallout, which is kind of in a way, it's kind of in a way, it's kind
same
of
idea, yeah.
It's kind of segueing a little bit with our ideas, but we came up with our ideas a long time before Fallout came out.
But it wasn't a nuclear war. In this case,
no,
it was a comet.
It was a comet. In our case.
Yeah, and it's finally been proven that the Younger Dryas comet has finally been dated accurately to 12,850 years.
It finally has been.
We made a mistake in our book. We thought it might be the Hiawatha asteroid impact crater, which is only like 900 miles on the other side of the Labrador Sea from where the Younger Dryas comet hit. And I thought, there's two of them in the same area, but yeah, sure there were. But since then it's been, confirmed. Since then the other one has been confirmed. That so Stephen makes fun. He says it was not Colonel Mustard with how do you say it?
I can't know.
The pipe or the candlestick.
Yes, yeah, but it's Colonel Mustard with the knife, but instead of being in the kitchen, he was in the dining room.
He was in the conservatory.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So we had to make, refute that information.
Okay, so here's what everybody wants to know, Leslie and Stephen. This is the main question: is what do the aliens want, and what is their end game?
What they want, they want a few things. They want us to denuclearize. They want us to take better care of the planet, and their end game may be to be a reintegration with us.
Yeah, see, we know that they're doing this bizarre hybrid breeding program, and so what's the end game there? Well, we think it's for possibly infiltration, trying to infiltrate our society and change us from the inside out. Possibly with the eventual goal of reintegration of our two peoples. That might be a long-term goal. But I believe it's more infiltration at this point. They're terribly worried about us blowing up the planet, so they're trying to cause change from the inside out. When they met with Eisenhower, I mean, this is all ufology, guessing mostly, and whistleblower testimony, but is maybe a bit iffy. But supposedly the aliens, the Nordic aliens, the ones who look just like human beings, by the way.
Yes.
Met with Eisenhower and wanted denuclearization was their primary want to take away from the meeting, but they just didn't get it. And what they did get was like this treaty between us where we would help keep their secret. And that's why the government has been stonewalling us for 80 years that this doesn't exist. Until recently when Elizondo released the 2017 videos, the DOD, the Department of Defense, blew our minds and probably every ufologist's minds, saying that these are real videos of real events taken by our military, and they remain unidentified. They say we don't know what they are, which that is another lie, because they have crashed ships and dead alien bodies, so we're pretty sure that they know exactly who they are and where they came from.
And it's also, too, a lot of people are astonished to find out that since 1945, there have been over 2,000 detonations of nuclear and nuclear weapons. Talking about air bursts, subsurface bursts, underwater bursts. You can't say that those 2,000 different detonations haven't done something to the planet.
Right.
I mean, there's like, for instance, you can go into things like, a lot of the ships that were built prior to the warships are built prior to World War II. There's this whole harvesting of them, and basically this pirating, where they're basically stealing, even from protected sites. They're stealing all this steel because
it hasn't been irradiated
because it was built like in World War I or prior
39,
right. So there's this whole market. Like they use it for things such as calibrating medical tools and medical devices. You have to have it so carefully calibrated so you can see the effects it's had on the planet. It's affected everything. It's just like, we can't say it hasn't had an effect. I mean, a big effect.
Yeah.
And so that's why that's their main goal. They want us to denuclearize. We think they're infiltrating our society to make that change happen, facilitate that change. According to Professor Jacobs, who did 10,000 hypnotic regressions, so it's a big pool of data. According to him, about 1 in 10 women are abductees are taken and fertilized, and then 4 months later they're taken again, and the fetus is stolen, and then years later they're introduced to their hybrid offspring.
Sometimes.
But this, frequently. But they're becoming more and more. The hybrids are becoming more and more human. The people are reporting. So we think that's what they're doing. Is they're creating a race of hybrids who can read our minds. Remember, these people are telepathic, so they have a huge advantage in our. They would have a huge advantage in our society, especially in infiltrating it. And well, the good news is that they just want us to not blow ourselves up. That's their main motivation right there,
Yeah, I saw a video several months ago of this white little boy with his eyes, again, a little bit too big than normal. He's sitting down at a piano, and he's playing the simplified version. Again, he's a year and a half playing the simplified version of Clair de Lune by Debussy, okay?
Yeah.
He just knows how to play. You can call them star children or whatever you want.
Right.
We do know that the intelligence quotient of the human being has dramatically increased, and the DNA is dramatically changed within a very short period of time. So
yes, in 3,000 years, we've changed 7%. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to be clear on one little thing, if that's all right. So a lot of people ask us, so are aliens involved at all? And because the people we think flying the UFOs in our skies right now are these cousins of ours, right? But we think 300,000 years ago, that's where we show signs of having been tampered or uplifted. And obviously we couldn't have uplifted ourselves. So I think here we're looking at alien intervention of some kind. And I wouldn't have put a lot of stock in it, but there's a few things that corroborate it. One is this CRISPR technology for proving that there actually looks like a cut and paste job in our speech centers. And also the ancient Sumerian tablets talk about the Anunnaki, and in the Anunnaki mythos, this is exactly what they claim happened. They claim the Anunnaki came here from another planet,
Right.
gold, and it was too onerous to mine it themselves, so they created this. They took Homo erectus and uplifted Homo erectus into Homo sapien, giving us enough intelligence and the ability to communicate, making us better slaves. And then over the 50,000 years after that, they slowly continued improving the model until Homo sapien became Homo sapien sapien. This is what we think actually happened.
Part of our working theory.
And if that's the case, then all of us are alien.
Right.
Every single human, Homo sapiens sapien on the planet, has a little bit of alien DNA in them that they use to splice in with ours, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that will explain when I'm really weird, and my wife goes, "Why are you being so weird today? And what's wrong with you?"
That little percent of alien is kicking in.
That's what I'm going to tell her. That's what I'm going to tell her. So, what I find very interesting is the government has come out and said, yes, there are aliens, basically, right? You know, like we kind of talked about that and kind of showed pictures and kind of there's videos and everything. And the American public, what did they do? They kind of yawned, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, that's super great. So here's my question. Do you think now, because it's such a strange thing, do you think now there will ever be full UFO disclosure where they'll talk about 3 big areas? They're bigger areas than this, but these are the 3 well known to the general public. Is Area 51, Skinwalker Ranch, and Dulce based in New Mexico, where they feel the gray are the big. Do you think the government will say, like, okay, here's Skinwalker Ranch. This is, I'm just going to use generic terms, a hot spot for aliens. This is Dulce based. We've kept the grays in here for years. And here's Area 51. And everyone can take a tour and they can go in and they can look. Do you think that will ever happen?
No.
I don't think so.
No, and why? Why not?
Well, this deal that Eisenhower made with them essentially said, go ahead and keep taking our people. We can't stop you anyway, but we'd love to have some of your technology. So they enter in this evil pact about selling out humanity for a couple of dribs and drabs of technology.
Of high tech.
They can never admit to that.
You ever see the old movie called Sneakers?
Yeah.
With Robert Redford and Dan Aykroyd says, and so Mike said that, take all the cowlips you want, just give us some of your technology.
Right.
It was like last 30 some odd years ago that movie was made, and it was just like, I forget the actor was just shaking his head, but Dan Aykroyd was saying everything is a conspiracy.
Mr. Conspiracy.
Way down.
Ironically, he really isn't far wrong. About that particular thing.
And now we're toying now with 6G technology, where with robots and synthetics are becoming so advanced that like in 10 years from now, let's say if Area 51 was opened up or something like that, right? People will be questioning, well, I've already got a robot in my home. How do I know that this isn't just a fake? It's like, and human beings, we're incredibly adaptable. We adapt to all kinds of weird stuff and good stuff really quickly. This is the new norm. It's a famous thing. This is the new norm, So honestly, what would be the motivation for them to come forward unless the alien or not our cousins decide that, okay, enough is enough. We're taking over the show, and because you guys cannot do what we asked you to do, and now we're the new kids on the block. We're going to take over everything. And then, of course, what would it do to all the different religions? On the planet and the stock market?
The stock market would crash, and the world would go,
People have a hard enough job communicating in the same language. I mean, Americans right now, we're not even communicating. Half of us are just on one page or the other. It's ridiculous. not within their same language. We're not communicating.
We think this meeting with Byrd really did happen too. And in this meeting, they claim to be the Ariani. They live in an underground world below the ice sheet of Antarctica. We think that's what Hitler was looking for when he was combing up and down the coast in the 30s and putting all these resources into Antarctica.
Yeah.
We think Admiral Byrd really was tasked in Operation High Jump with the destruction of this, what they suspected was a Nazi base down there, and instead discovered flying saucers and aliens, or cousins. And they claimed to be the Ariani living this underground world, and they said that they normally try and have nothing to do with us barbarians on the surface in our barbaric wars, but that because we cracked the atom, they had to intervene. They had to, because this power was beyond our ability to control. And of course, they're probably quite right about that. So they view us kind of as barbarians, and so it might take a bit of reintegration. And I think that's what they're up to. They're slowly trying to change us to be, I don't know, maybe less barbaric, hopefully. And we think too that there's some rumors going around the ufology community that at this point the cousins want disclosure. They want to come out and be known. But now it's our governments that are hiding it. And we're not really entirely sure why they would want to do this. But we think that this is why the aliens are showing themselves more often. The thing with the Phoenix Lights, I mean, they started in southern Nevada, crossed the entire state of Arizona, but making sure to go right over Phoenix, the biggest population, and then all the way across the rest of Arizona into Mexico, nice and slow too, to make sure to be seen. So we think that they're trying to, and we think maybe that's crop circles too, is they're trying to reach out to us this way, kind of sidestepping the government maybe more and talking directly to the science
community. Yes,
we think that maybe is what's going on with that. So
just like people, there's good and bad people, right? There's just people you just can't reach, no matter what you try to do, whether you use, like I said, try to Tai Chi or mental health or on and on and on. There are just some people just want to watch the world burn. Do you think there are aliens like that? Because I can't believe there are not. There has to be some type of alien life is just looking for pure destruction.
It would be virtually impossible that there would not be that. What you're saying, yes, virtually impossible.
This is more of the spiritual aspect of it, but Stephen just kind of discovered this more as a youngster when he was doing his Tai Chi. When you do moving, Tai Chi is moving meditation.
That's part of it.
And as you meditate, you start to open that heart chakra, and you start to use your upper chakras more and become less base, use your lower chakras less. In other words, you become more spiritually evolved as you go, as you do this work.
The main thing that it does, it decreases the brain wave frequency. It puts you into an alpha state. And when you move slowly, it literally activates different parts of the brain. Okay. And it's amazing that moving slowly, like the old saying, like, you have to, crawl before you can walk and walk before you can run. It's like, it's almost like what I'm seeing happening with education these days. Putting a 1 and a 2-year-old in front of a computer screen where everything is running at 30 to 40 cycles per second. So the optic nerve is encoding this stuff way too quickly for an undeveloped mind. And so literally you're just basically encoding sound bites instead of learning how to read.
But I was trying to make more the point that if you're able to be telepathic, it's because you're vibrating your upper chakras, the clairvoyant chakras. And by doing that, you become much more spiritually peaceful person. So I don't see them as, because they could have just solved the problem of us a long time ago, just wipe us off the
Right.
planet if they want to, right?
Absolutely.
But they're not.
Absolutely.
They're trying to raise us up, I think, instead.
And also, they have a need for us too. We've also found too that probably their genetics and their DNA may have suffered too, maybe from all the nuclear blasts, and also possibly from just living underground as a choice.
Sure.
So the new infusions, like for instance, the cow mutilations.
Right.
Yeah.
We think they have herds underground and they need regular infusions of surface DNA from surface beasts.
Oh,
And we think that might be the
interesting.
case with them. They may have,
Interesting.
for instance, they might have become less viable living underground and need regular infusions from surface Caucasian humans because they happen to be a branch of the Caucasian race.
Right.
And so that's why they need so much genetic material,
and the abduction thing goes back to the vampire mythos too,
Yeah.
which we thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
What do vampires do? They come in the middle of the night. They're powerful. They paralyze you. They exsanguinate you, take part of your blood or all your blood,
Yeah.
and they can change form. It's
Only come in the middle of the night.
It's the alien. It's like the upgraded,
Yeah.
the updated version of the alien abduction.
And the incubus myth is also very similar in
Yeah.
the breeding program they're doing.
And the succubus.
A woman is raped by a demon, and that
Correct.
demon impregnates her. But then the pregnancy is just air at some point. The pregnancy is non-viable and never comes to term. Well, that's because they stole the fetus, and then there's evidence. I mean, there's testimonies of this going back to the 1600s. So
yeah,
it's something they've been doing for quite a long time. Now, so we don't know if it's something they personally need, like they need our DNA for themselves, or if they need it possibly to create their race of greys, their worker race of greys. It's possible that these are building blocks, genetic building blocks that they need to at least be able to start with, viable genetic material, and then maybe change it into what they need,
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because I think it's kind of an interesting scenario in the sense, too, is I know you guys probably don't cover this in your book, but I've spoken to other guests who talked about this, how Bigfoot and aliens are.
I knew that you were coming up.
Actually, we do believe in a connection between the two.
So talk a little bit about that. I don't know how much you guys have talked about it or discussed that. Why do you think that is?
Well, remember, we were talking that 300,000 years ago, our own genetic DNA was tampered with.
Right.
This is supposed to be also the time that Australopithecus Gigantopithecus and Australopithecus robustus, the two possible progenitors for Bigfoot, these creatures were also on the planet at the same time. So you've got an alien race on our planet 300,000 years ago trying to create a worker race, and maybe they were experimenting with the bigger apes, the giant apes, turning them into workers as well. Making them walk on uprights. And so now we have all these alien bases hidden all around our planet, usually in volcanoes, inside mountains. And there's a lot of activity. There's Mount Shasta in Northern California, Mount Denali in Alaska, Mount Hayes in Alaska. These are all Bigfoot areas too.
Mount Kailash.
And we know that Kailash is a Yeti area, right? Mount Kailash. These are all suspected hollowed out mountains that we think our cousins have occupied. And so we think they created these Bigfoots and thousands of years ago, and now maybe use them as sentries to protect the entrances into their underground worlds.
Sure.
Obviously, they're also too. Apparently, they also seem to be telepathic, and they have been seen quite frequently with UFOs and disappearing in the middle of, let's say, like a snowbank. There's the footprints there, and then all of a sudden, zero footprints.
Right.
They're just gone.
And bizarre lights are frequently reported in Bigfoot sightings. There's definitely a correlation between activity and Bigfoot activity. And Bigfoot activity frequently is around mountains that we suspect of being alien bases.
Yeah. And that to me is really interesting because I also think Bigfoot is always brought forward, but I also think other cryptids are associated with aliens. Because there are certain cryptids in Wisconsin. We have the Beast of Bray Road, which is basically like a werewolf, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Michigan has the Dog Man. And again, what's interesting about it is they're very rarely seen. When they are seen, again, people claim, that it has to do with aliens or some sort. So I think that's really interesting too. Look, before we wrap up here, I just have a couple more questions. I could go for hours. You guys are fascinating, blowing
Thank
my
you. We
mind.
love talking about this subject. It's true.
I can see you guys love it, and that's great. Let me ask you this. Now, I know you're not in the paranormal or anything like that, but what's interesting to me too is how the paranormal crosses over to aliens and everything like that, because
yes,
there has been times where there's stories have brought up about aliens and the paranormal, and one of the biggest ones I think is, you've heard of the Mothman, right?
yeah.
That's
Sure.
the big one. Well, now what's super interesting is around here in the Midwest, because it's known to be in Virginia, but there have been recent sightings of the Chicago Mothman around Chicago, around Illinois, which is basically 3 or 4 hour drive to Chicago from where I live. And why do you think that is? Why do you think, because the original Mothman story, as we all know, somebody saw him, the bridge collapsed, all these people died. People thought it was more of a forewarning, to be like, hey, the bridge is not safe. Kind of what you guys are talking about, to warn us, right?
Yeah, I mean, we can't be sure, but like I said before, they seem to use, our cousins have no qualms
Yeah.
about using genetic modification to
Right.
create various, half man, half beasts. It shows in the ancient Sumerian tablets that they were experimenting with this thing. They have human heads on dogs, and leashes around the necks, but the head is on a,
Russian scientists did that back in the late 50s, where you put a head on made a two-headed dog, and it lived for like 30 minutes or so. Just really gross stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think, why not make a Mothman if you need Mothman? Why not make a werewolf if you need a werewolf or something?
The only thing I know about the Mothman, I've seen a documentary and I watched the Richard Gere movie. Apart from that, I don't know too much about the Mothman, but I do know that there were several credible witnesses that swear that they saw this entity.
We do tie most of all of the paranormal world into this phenomenon, except it's obvious that hauntings seem to be more attached to a place. And we think they really are human spirits that used to live, that are trapped here somehow, in the astral plane. Yeah, Steve saw one time too.
When I was 15, I saw that. Definitely. It's on one of our tiles, right?
Yeah, we have
I saw the lady who used to live at the.
It's an old Queen Anne mansion in Avalon, Catalina Island in Avalon.
Yeah, my dad and I were remodeling it, and during the middle of the day, and I was listening to a Chicago tape, "Feeling Stronger Every Day," and I was just remodeling the lower bathroom, and this old lady that looked like she was in black and white walked by the back door and had this dark hair, but kind of had this hostile look on her face, like saying,
she's looking at him hostile.
What kind of music are you listening to in my kitchen? She looked like she was a black and white picture. She just walked by, and I got up and I thought, well, what the hell are you doing? This is private property. So I got up. I'm 15, almost 16 years old. It only took me about 5 seconds to get to the door, and I went outside. I could not find her,
gone.
and there was no place for her to hide.
Yeah.
There was no like big bunches of trees or anything like that.
And it was
And
cold, right? You said there was a
yeah,
weird cold feeling before
so yeah,
she
it was weird.
came, you
But
know.
anyway, so years later, I told Leslie about this, and we did
Yeah.
some research on the place.
And there was only one woman who lived in the house for any appreciable time, because it was built by a bachelor, and then a family owned it with the woman in charge of the family, and then a bachelor.
Okay.
So we looked her up, and we found an old photo of this lady online because she wrote a book, and her picture was on the inside cover. And he says it's her, you know. We all just got like the willies, you know.
That's exactly the lady there. It's
Yeah.
wow.
So, I mean, there's not just the alien phenomenon, but we know the difference between it. This blackout thing is very common. That's the signature for it, where,
Seems to be.
you know, people will see something bizarre and then black out, and then they're tucked in bed,
Right.
and 2 hours later they wake up all nice and cozy in bed again, you know.
Yeah.
But there's
So
the paranormal
ahead.
too, the
He wants to
astral
talk- he
plane.
wants to ask you.
The astral plane, Steve had a lot of activity there from his handlers too. So we think they sort of monitor people in the astral plane as well. So there's all kinds of psychic and paranormal type of phenomenon that's linked to the UFO phenomenon as well.
I wanted to interject real quickly here. We had a guy come by, what was his name, Jeremy?
Jeremy Norrie.
Yeah. He came by to do a documentary on us about 2 months ago. And 2 days before he came by, I had this dream. I call it a dream, but it was really a premonition. I saw he came and we were sitting down at the table, and he said that he was going to have to go to Arizona real soon, and that there was something going wrong with his left shoulder. And I told Leslie this, and I said, okay, Jeremy, before we get going, I said, ask him these 2 questions. Are you going to Arizona real soon, and do you have something going on with your left shoulder? And sure enough, he's gone.
Yes.
Yes and yes. He had been overworking his left side, and he had shoulder and chest pain on his left side. This is a younger guy, younger than we are, and it was just like I was just talking to him, and this was 2 days before the event, you know. So I still get these precog things that are happening to me that I've had throughout my life, and I can prove them, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I should have said before you said Bigfoot, I should have said, you're going to ask about Bigfoot, right? It was like right there in my head.
Right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. So if someone gets your book and they're reading your book, and let's say they've been abducted by by aliens or whatever you want to say, what advice would you give them? Because let's say someone's just searching for answers, they've been abducted, they get your book and they start reading it because they're just searching for anything. What would you say to them?
Well, I would ask them to write down or record every little detail that they can remember, if they can remember anything.
Yeah, we're still in the research phase.
And then if they can somehow maybe set up ring cameras in their room, that would be a good idea. Also, maybe try and get some quality hypnotherapy while it's still fairly fresh. Yeah. And also, too, the other thing would be to ask
find a bead.
Ask other family members if they have had a similar thing.
Check with other families, but check yourself, your body for these beads
also
they put in people.
Right? Yes.
They put in frequently devices. It's like a grain of rice. These little objects. And they use them for tracking the people they want to take again and again and again.
Right.
So check. I've heard of them being inside the upper thigh, on the leg,
the ear,
in the ear, and Steve's was in his deltoid.
Mine was in my deltoid.
And I don't know. Whitley Strieber, the guy from the Contact book, he says that his bead is helping him, that he's got some sort of a connection with the aliens, and somehow when he asks the universe for help, the help comes. So I don't want to, I mean, my first advice would have been maybe to find the bead and cut that thing out yourself, but maybe not. Right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the wrong thing to do. Maybe this connection is a good thing in the long run for the human race.
Yeah, it's amazing. So Leslie and Stephen, you have been amazing. Like I said, I could talk to you for hours, and hopefully I can have you back on because I haven't gotten to like Hollow Earth and all these other things I wanted to talk to you about.
Oh, we'd love
Sure.
to,
But
yeah. Can
so
we do one more shameless plug for the
no, I was
book?
gonna say to you, what's coming up? What's coming up for you two, and what's going on? And yes,
Oh, yes,
plug the
great.
book.
Thank you for asking. We just started doing lecture series on the UFO phenomenon. We created a new PowerPoint lecture series this summer called "The Link Between UFOs and the Great Flood," and we're creating a second one too. So anyone out there that, at least for the Southern California region right now, we'd rather not travel too far if we can. If you want anybody for speaking events, we're happy to come out and do it for your events. Then also, the book is available on Amazon and Ingram. It's called Who They Are and What They're Up To. And our Instagram page is an important link to us.
Yeah.
We're trying to, we've put all our experiences in these like series of events that happened to the family because there was just too many to cover in one podcast or
Right,
three
right.
podcasts for that matter because there's so many.
Right.
But people can check out if they're curious about more of our experiences. They're all there. And
It's
also,
at leslie.shaw.author.
yeah, and Leslie is LESLIE.SHAW.author. So hopefully
Yes, and
reach
I'll
out
put
to
all the
us.
links.
If you've had experiences, we'd love to hear them.
Great. That was my next question. Boy, you guys are precog.
Certainly.
That was my next question is if people can reach out to you, if they have an experience, if they're a little worried, maybe they're going through some things
Right.
because they believe they had something, that's no problem. They can reach out
They
to
can
you.
DM us. We'd be happy to help in any way we
I
can.
love that. I love that. Because
We're also
again, I
trying
think
to start leading experiencer groups, which is something a lot of people haven't heard of. I went to one myself that was standing room only. The only thing I can say about
Contact
it,
in the desert.
the contact in the desert. The only thing
right, contact in the desert. Yeah.
The only thing I can say about that is that myself being fairly intuitive and having put in the work to become intuitive and coming from a family that's intuitive, I can spot the charlatans pretty quickly, and I can spot people that when they're talking, that the ones that are telling the truth. And sometimes these experiencer groups are people that just want to, they're a little nuts themselves, but they feel like in a group of comfort where they can say things like,
it's mostly sincere people
really,
who've had a real experience.
And sometimes you'll hear the ones that you can tell there's a ring of truth to it. Other ones are just like Ashtar told this guy I met in Switzerland, said hi. He said, "You go tell such and such person that Ashtar says hi." Really, okay.
And
right.
Because we read so many accounts. One thing, over the many years, Professor Jacobs said this is very funny. The explanation for the alien abduction phenomenon keeps changing. It's hysteria, or it's this condition, or it's that condition, or it's this malady, or this brain problem, or various, like 10 different over the years. It's changed, but the phenomenon itself almost is always the same. From event to event to event, the people are reporting nearly identical experiences. So the explanations are constantly shifting. The event itself is very stable.
It remains stable.
Yeah. Right. Well, again, I can't say enough how amazing this was. This, I've taken too much of your time, but
thank you for having us. We loved it.
Yeah, and like I said, I'd love to have you back on because I want to go through some other different things we didn't get to, as well as talk about coming up. One of I think the biggest thing is really some changes that I'm kind of hearing from the news, about more people putting articles with your hybrid, talking about hybrid and finding that out, with the population and stuff. So it's something I really want to dig a little more deeper into because I think that's something that's absolutely fascinating. and interesting, not only to me, but to my audience. So
All right.
thank you again.
Thanks,
I love
John.
you guys. This was amazing, like I said. And I will be in touch again. And then I will put in the episode all your links and everything. So my spooky friends out there, if you are looking to get in touch with Leslie and Stephen to talk about something, or maybe you've had an experience, please share it with them, because they're very nice, very high integrity. I can tell they're going to help you. So
Thank you,
please do
John,
that.
and thanks everyone for listening.
Yes.
Thanks, Leslie, Stephen. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.